What is going on, my dudes and dudettes? Sean here with Asna Serpentarium. Today, as you can see by the title, we're going to talk about feeding frequency versus feeding size. What's potentially better for your snake. This is a multi-layered topic. I'll try to break it down as much as I can for you all. Please note as well, I'm not an expert, okay, but I have done a lot of reading on all different types of snakes. I've kept a lot of snakes now and in the past. I've kept multiple different species. I've bred multiple different species, and I like to think that I know what I'm doing, but we all make mistakes, and you shouldn't take my advice as gospel, or anyone of them shouldn't take their advice as gospel, okay. So let's just get straight into it. Right, feeding frequently then. So what you do if you're feeding frequently is you'd feed a smaller meal more often. Sort of like how we eat 3 meals a day, smaller meals, rather than having, a big huge meal once a week like snakes do. So theoretically you could choose to feed, say, this spotted python. You could probably feed it like a pinky every day. And just feed it like that, or you could feed it a normal sized meal once a week, or you could feed it something a little bit bigger every 10 to 14 days. So there's lots of different ways to do it, and today we're just going to talk about the benefits of doing either, when you would do one or over the other, and what help you choose which one to do. So when you feed smaller prey items less often, there's actually less stress on the digestive system of the snake. So what that means then is it's easier on all the snake's organs and stuff to break that meal down and digest it all, so it can produce energy and fat and the vitamins and so on. But there's a trade-off there. There's sort of proven studies, especially on certain species of snake, where the more often you feed food, it sort of raises the cytoplasms in its blood, so it's sort of like raising your blood sugar, and that can be bad for the snake then. And there's studies that the less often that those spikes happen, even if it's a slightly bigger spike, sometimes it's better to have less of those spikes of the snake's life, and that'll prolong the snake's life then. So there is a trade-off to be had there. But then feeding bigger meals, obviously then that puts more stress on the digestive system. It's actually cheaper to feed a bigger meal less often, and obviously then you've got that benefit of the cytoplasm stuff, where the snake could potentially live longer. So there's lots of trade-offs to be had. Obviously I wouldn't recommend feeding a snake every day either, guys. And there's also as well, according to a lot of research that I've actually read, even if you're feeding the same volume or grammage of snake of feeders per month, if you feed that in one meal, the snake will actually grow more compared to if you fed it over 4 meals. So that's something to bear in mind as well. So say now if you've got a Burmese python, you'd be better off, if you wanted it to grow, you'd be better off feeding it one, say, 1,000 gram rabbit per month than 4 250 gram rats, if that makes sense. But obviously the snake has got to be big enough to eat whatever prey size you are choosing to feed it, and it's got to be able to digest that in an efficient manner, so it's not overly stressful on the system. So with that in mind then, guys, what should you do when feeding a snake? Should you feed it more frequently? It'll cost more, it'll be easier on the digestive system, but potentially the snake will actually take longer to grow, even though you're feeding it the same amount of food, and obviously it'll raise those cytoplasms in the blood. I think I'm saying that wrong, but you can Google it for yourself to look up what I'm talking about here. So what should you do? Well, what I personally like to do is, for young snakes, they've got really small bodies, and they've got you know, quite fragile systems. So what I like to do with smaller snakes is feed them smaller meals and more often. And then for adult snakes or sub-adult snakes, I feed them less often, bigger meals, and then, you know, that's what they have most of their lives then. And what you can find as well with baby snakes, it's good to keep them going on their food once you get them started. So that smaller meal size idea is better then, really, for little baby snakes. And potentially as well, you know, once you get them started, you could switch to a bigger meal and less often, and it would be less expensive. But they've got such small bodies, it doesn't really work that well. So you've got to find sort of like a trade-off, really. And you've obviously as well, you've got to get value for money, because we don't live in an imaginary world where you can afford to feed like a 70p pinky every day to a hatchling because it's better for it to digest it, you know what I mean? So there are trade-offs to be had, as always. So obviously feeding an appropriate size meal is the normal guide, but whatever works for you is best, really, and whatever works for the snake, as long as it's not obese or skinny. So there's that to bear in mind. What I try to do most of all, though, is sort of emulate as much as possible what the snake's diet and feeding frequency and feeding size is like in nature. That's what I personally like to do. So the only way to do that really is to just do as much homework on whatever wild species you have. Sorry, whatever species you have, what it's like in the wild, what its diet is consisting of, and so on. It isn't always possible to emulate it. For example, my Woma python, they're actually reptile specialists in the wild. They feed mostly on lizards, and that isn't possible in captivity, because you'd have to feed like a lizard every day or every other day, and that would cost thousands and thousands over the course of the snake's life. And actually, to be honest, there's actually more nutrients in rodents than what there are in lizards. So, you know, you've really got to be sort of sensible about it. Some things just aren't practical to do, but if you emulate that as closely as possible to whatever the snake's diet and lifestyle is in the wild, that's how you'll get a healthy snake. For example, super dwarf retics in the wild, is thought that they only eat for a couple of months of the year and then they don't eat for the rest of the year, and this is due to birds migrating and stuff like that. Obviously, don't just take my word for that. I could be wrong. All of this is off the top of my head. I've not sat down and researched all of this beforehand. This is just stuff that I've got in my head, that I've heard before and so on. So please just research everything that I'm saying. So, you know, and obviously we've got the royal pythons or ball pythons in the wild. They used to fast in a lot, and that's why they still fast in captivity. And then we've got colubrids and stuff like that, where it's pretty straightforward. They eat small meals fairly regularly because of their slim size and inability to actually take out a bigger meal. And then they don't eat in the winter, but they do that in captivity anyway, as long as you brumate them. Some will go off food regardless of whether you brumate them or not. And I think brumating them is probably the best for the snake's health. So that's more or less it, guys. I've got nothing else to really comment on about this topic. Just don't feed anything too big, because obviously your snake is going to regurgitate that and you could have all sorts of problems. You could also have prolapse, which I'm actually going to do a separate video on. And if you don't know what a prolapse is, then just quickly do your homework on that. And it's not something you want, really. A prolapse, it's really bad for your snake. So just sort of think about what you want to do and how you want to do things. What works for me might not work for you. What works for you might not work for Harry down the street. What works for Harry down the street might work for me. Do you see what I mean? It's different for every situation. As long as your snake is a good weight and is healthy, then keep doing what you're doing, really, as far as feeding frequency. So I hope you've enjoyed this, guys. Feel free to comment down below what sort of method you adopt for feeding. I'll make sure to reply back, have a little chat with you in the comment section. As always, if you're new around here, make sure you subscribe, destroy that like button, smash that notifications bell, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks, guys.